Hello, everybody, and welcome in for the final episode of Season 7 of the Lions Grid. Jeffrey, it has been a long 2023 NFL season, but with the Chiefs being victorious in Super Bowl 59, we have finally arrived at the end.
And thus comes the long, dark winter of no football.
Surprisingly, we'll take a look here. Football, it is a long time before we'll actually be seeing games again. But the NFL does keep there's a lot of stuff happening here in the spring to keep an eye on. So it should be pretty exciting times. Obviously not as exciting as being able to see the Lions on the field. But a lot of what's going to happen in this offseason could really impact, what we see on the field next season. So without further ado, Jeffrey, let's jump in here and talk about the game that was. Obviously, we had I think it was a pretty good game between Kansas City and San Francisco. It was pretty even all the way throughout, and of course, it went to overtime. And the final score being, of course, 25-22, Kansas City getting the win there, and your Super Bowl MVP was Mr. Patrick Mahomes yet again here. I think that's three Super Bowl MVPs for Patrick. So he's doing
starting that chase to Brady.
he is probably the only one that can catch him, and he definitely took another step towards that. But it's still, I mean, it's a long way to go. But in general, I mean, it was I think a good game.
Yeah, it was competitive, sloppy in the beginning. A lot of early kind of jittery turnovers, I feel like, but they kind of locked in at the end.
Yeah, both teams, they had a couple of drives there where they looked like they were finally getting it figured out on offense, and both had fumbles that turned the ball over and stopped that progress. So
yeah,
and of course after
guys who don't fumble typically, which is also kind of wild.
Isaiah Pacheco got the fumble for the Chiefs there. And, of course, that led to the moment on the sidelines, Travis Kelce getting pulled out just before that happened and letting Coach Andy Reid know that he was not pleased with the decision to remove him from the game, giving him quite the shove there, getting in his face, yelling. I know they talked about it on their podcast, the Kelce brothers. And, he said that, Andy Reid came up to him afterwards and said, you can't be doing that. I got lots of cameras on me. But, telling them they were good and they have, I think, a pretty good, solid relationship. In fact, he said, if Andy Reid was to retire, which he doesn't think Andy Reid is going to retire after the Super Bowl victory, that Travis Kelce would retire as well. Like, if Andy Reid's out, he's only playing for Andy Reid. So, they have a good relationship, but certainly the optics of it, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it was wild when it happened. Like I almost got up after that to kind of refill my drink and get some more chips, and all of a sudden I saw this giant dude assaulting this old man. But I think because he didn't fall down, if he would have fell down or some kind of injury happened or something, I feel like it would have brought on more heat for them. But I feel like the fact that he didn't get hurt or anything, and the fact they ended up winning, everything kind of gets washed out. But I don't know, those Swifties, they don't forget.
They hold grudges. They surely do.
I feel like the actual act, I wouldn't do that to a coach because it's like, man, you gotta. There's some respect there. I know, I feel like players going after players is one thing. Like you get into a shoving match with a dude on the other team, but I feel like your own guy kind of acting that way towards a coach. I feel like there was a line crossed though.
Yeah, and I liked how his brother on the podcast did call him out. He said, you went not only with shoving him was going across the line, but just yelling at him in the way he was in the moment was going, crossing the line as well. So and Travis sort of recognized that. He said, yeah, it was my bad, and I certainly don't think it's going to cause any problems for the two of them moving forward. But it was an interesting moment. I haven't really seen that before in any game, let alone a Super Bowl. So that is certainly interesting.
I wonder if this is going to make a lyric in Taylor Swift's breakup song about this. Because if they do break up, there's going to be a song about it. And I wonder if this will make it onto the lyrics.
if she sprinkles in a little bit of the because she was friends with Andy Reid before dating Travis Kelsey.
Yeah,
So
which is wild in itself. But I guess if you're a billionaire and that popular, you know people.
yeah, it's crazy. I know his their dad was super excited because he uh, Taylor Swift was introducing him to Paul McCartney. So
Oh shoot, okay,
because there were,
dang,
of course, it was the star-studded event out there in Las Vegas.
yeah,
Everybody traveling for the Super Bowl. So yeah, it was it's kind of cool how they able to bring those worlds together. But yeah, of course, the Chiefs getting the victory done. If you are someone who does believe in the script writing that is alleged to occur in the NFL, one of the things that I've seen pointed out multiple times is the fact that this is the third straight Super Bowl that the Chiefs have gone without being called for an offensive holding penalty. And this year, that's quite the thing because they have been one of the most penalized teams in the league this season. In fact, their offensive tackle, their right tackle, left tackle, the one guy who was jumping off sides, but it wasn't getting called against the Lions.
yep. And then all of a sudden, it started getting called. We still
He
won.
is he is the most penalized offensive player in the league by far, and nothing happened. No flags in this game. So some people they might be just angry 49er fans, but it is worth noting
Do they have
that
picture
it's
evidence of these snaps where he was off sides?
not where he was offsides, but where there were definitely some examples of holding on both Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Armistead. There were definitely a couple of times where some penalties could have been called, but they chose to keep the flag in their pocket. So
Yeah, I think I feel like refs are biased in a way. Like it's a big game. Sometimes they like because they're human also. It's like I don't want to ruin this game with a call like that, or am I going to let these guys play because they've got to the highest level? But like that in itself is not very good because that like leads to this inconsistency that people feel like happens when they see all this and they can start piecing things together that the NFL is possibly scripted. I
they
don't
put
think
on
so,
their
but
put
I
on
mean,
those
I
tinfoil hats and start connecting the
yeah,
strings.
yeah, but it is interesting, and it kind of opens up the question about like people have been calling for better refereeing or better referee training or more like guidance from the NFL on how to call things.
Mhm.
But but kind of as we'll talk about below, I believe the NFL is slow moving when it comes to decision making and improving that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of it is still weird the fact that the referees are not like NFL employees, like that they don't manage and take care of that, and you would think that that would be something that they would do and would fall under their purview, but
Right.
I mean, maybe this offseason, who knows? Who knows? But I think two things that more realistically impacted the outcome of this game. The first one was the Drew Greenlaw injury when he was running onto the field there, and he his
That was
Achilles popped. That was a big loss. I mean, he's an All-Pro linebacker in the middle of that defense. Uh, Really tough to lose him, and it wasn't making a play. It was just running onto the field after a change of possession. So that was a big thing. And then the other thing, it seems weird, but San Francisco having this weird not knowing how the overtime worked in the Super Bowl and deciding to take the ball first. And of course, it came out afterwards, coaches and players not really knowing that, hey, the Super Bowl has its own mechanics for the Super Bowl in OT. It seemed so those more so than the referees, I think, impacted the game. That Greenlaw injury, and then of course that decision to take the ball first because they took the ball, they ended up only getting a field goal, and then you gave the ball back to Patrick Mahomes with the ability to come out and win the game. So, yeah, for me, those are probably two of the bigger issues of why they lost. But Jeffrey, I have a question for you, and it kind of goes towards the officiating side of things. But personally, I like the Super Bowl OT rules better, where both teams get to possess the ball regardless of what happens. And then, yeah, I don't understand why the Super Bowl in particular has a unique overtime rule and why those aren't consistent throughout the season. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I feel like after that playoff loss that Buffalo had, where Josh Allen never really saw the field afterwards, and people are like, "This is like the most anticipated, most watched game. All eyes are on us," and it's like the overtime rules are just, I don't know. I just they feel like they come out of another era in the regular season, but in the Super Bowl here, like that's perfect. Each team gets a chance to do it. It's not going as nuts as college football can get to, which I do personally like the way the college does it, because it just ups the stakes every time. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think they should be used in all games. I don't see why just keeping it to the playoffs. But kind of what I was alluding to earlier, I think overall the NFL is slow to like adopt and modernize things, and like this is just kind of like a casualty of that. Like there's no good reason not to. I feel like.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there should be consistency. I feel, and whether they go with adopting these Super Bowl, the playoff overtime rules, and making those universal, or I'm on board with you. I would prefer they actually adopt the college football methodology, or maybe a version of it where maybe they're starting further back with the ball, whatever it may be. Um, I'd like to see that. But I think definitely making some consistency there. Honestly, the fault lies with the 49ers and like, the Kansas City Chiefs, the players came out and said, yeah, we prepped for it. We got over the rules. We knew what to expect. Bad news for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch there that their team didn't understand exactly what was going on. And so
Yeah,
it's
Kyle
unfortunate.
Shanahan came out and said like, "Oh, we wanted to have the game in our hands, so we wanted to like whoever got the second possession, we wanted it." But like, I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to think about it. I feel like you should know what you want to get after the other team has possession, but you know.
Yeah, I definitely would feel better knowing what I have to score. I guess the downside to it is then that you're giving, if you do match them touchdown for touchdown, that you're giving the ball back to them with a chance to win the game. But I mean, at least at that point, you know what you're up against. So, and if you do force a turnover, then that was their sort of they had their drive and you force the turnover. So all you have to do at that point is score.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. It's weird. But in Kyle Shanahan not wanting to take all the blame himself, they seem to have found a scapegoat. And surprisingly, the 49ers have fired their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilkes. Um, yeah, it kind of shocking. Gets them to the Super Bowl. I don't think that defense at all was the reason why they lost the game. Again, the Greenlaw injury was pretty
He,
was
that
a
was
big factor
yeah,
in
and it was a
in that.
freak kind of thing.
Yeah, so I don't really know why Steve Wilkes was fired, but I do know
Like,
that it has caused the rumor mill to start a turning. And again, all those conspiracy theorists out there connecting the strings, they're thinking, well, who is a defensive minded guy who isn't with a team? Bill Belichick.
oh
You
dang,
know
that would be
who you know who Kyle Shanahan wanted to be playing quarterback this year for the San Francisco 49ers? Tom Brady.
that's
You know
true.
who used to coach Tom Brady? Bill Belichick. So here we go. In
Yeah,
2024, we're going to see Bill Belichick as the 49ers defensive coordinator and Tom Brady stepping out of the Fox sports commentator booth to come be the starting QB for his hometown San Francisco
that would be
49ers.
that would be nuts. I don't see that happening, but that would be absolutely crazy.
That is the spicy tea that's out there. That's the rumor, the legend, the mystery. I don't know if that's all going to come to pass, but it does raise an interesting question, Jeffrey. And we did talk about it a little bit. But do you think Brock Purdy is going to end up being the long-term QB for San Francisco? We talked about how they are definitely in win a Super Bowl mode. They have moved away from Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. They have shown time and time again a hunger and appetite to get the right guy under center to get them to the promised land. Do you think Brock Purdy is? I mean, he went 23 of 38 in this game. He had 255 yards and a touchdown. He did miss Brandon, or not Brandon. Yeah, Brandon Ayuk. He missed him on a pass that could have set them up in position late in the game. But I mean, what are your thoughts here, Jeffrey? Do you think possibly we might see someone other than Brock Purdy under center for San Francisco in 2024?
I think they stick with him because I mean he took them to the game, the
You
big
got him.
game 2 year like basically on the cusp 2 years ago. The only time he didn't do it was when he like had to have Tommy John surgery. He couldn't throw the ball. Uh, so I think they do. I think the firing of the Steve Wilkes was. I think that's a little bit more telling on the defense to me because there were a couple times in the playoffs where Kyle Shanahan used a timeout because he didn't like what was on the field for the defense.
Mhm.
And he said he answered in the press conference being like, I didn't like the way we looked, so I wanted to get things straight. And then he did it in the Super Bowl too. So I feel like the focus is actually more on the defensive side of the ball because the offense has a bunch of stars, and I feel like Brock Purdy has been doing pretty much everything he can for such a cheap contract. You can go out and get somebody. I'm not sure what their cap space is, but like you're not paying it for quarterbacks. The guy's not even a millionaire.
Yeah, no, they definitely have him on a very team friendly rookie deal, and it is a balancing act when it comes to cap space, balancing keeping the right guys, and certainly having to pay a quarterback can be a big, you're going to have to make sacrifices elsewhere. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I can't rule anything out. I don't think they're necessarily going to be hard committed to Brock Purdy. But at the same time, I don't necessarily know where they're going to find a better option. Maybe they go out and pursue Kirk Cousins. Maybe some other, maybe Tom Brady comes out of retirement for him. I don't really know. But it definitely seems
That
like
would be
right
wild.
now the right now in the NFL, the path to a Lombardi Trophy runs through Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and you need a QB that can beat him. Is how teams look at it. I don't necessarily think that's right. I think you need a team that's capable of beating him. But I feel like too often things get simplified into it being a quarterback versus QB versus QB, and it just seems like Brock Purdy isn't going to make the plays that you need in the game to help you beat someone like Patrick Mahomes. So uh, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But yeah,
Yeah.
well, as we've been talking about, Jeffrey, the offseason is starting, and we are now all 32 teams have moved into it. We'll go ahead here and take a look at some of the important dates this offseason to keep your eyes on. And we're starting out here with February 20th through March 5th is when teams can designate players with the franchise tag or transition players. So that's going from the 20th until March 5th. And then from February 27th to March 4th is the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Then in March 11th through the 13th, those are the first 2 days where NFL teams can start to negotiate with players who are unrestricted free agents. And then on March 13th, that is at 4 o'clock is go time, right? That is the new year starts. Free agency is open. Trades are open.
We're
All
about a
that
month away
talking they
from
were all the talking they were doing those 2 days prior, they can now actually make everything official on March 13th. Then March 24th through the 27th, they have their annual league meetings down in Florida. And then April 1st, any team that has hired a new head coach, they can start their offseason workout programs on April 1st. Then moving on to
Uh,
April 15th,
they get a 14-day head start on the people who are
14 head days start on the returning head coaches in their offseason programs. And then April 17th is the deadline for when teams can have the visits, interviews, all that in-person stuff with with people that are going into the draft. They can do that at their facilities. Is the cutoff date is April 17th, and then April 19th is the deadline for restricted free agents to sign their offer sheets. Since they started talking to people on the 11th, they're working with guys, they're putting offers in front of them. They have up until the 19th to to sign those offer sheets. And then on April 24th, there is a couple of deadlines that happen. The first is that it is the deadline for teams. So, say, for example, someone's trying to take a restricted free agent from your team. You have the ability to actually match that's the deadline for matching their deals and offer sheets at that point in time. So April 24th, if they're a restricted free agent, that's where teams have to make their own offers to them. And it's also the deadline for when teams can do any of the interviewing, testing, visiting with draft eligible players at any location. So back on the 17th, the 17th is the last date they can have them in like the team facilities, and then the 24th is the last time they can meet with them anywhere. Like at that point, they're done until the draft happens, which of course this year is in downtown Detroit. It's going to take place from the 25th to the 27th.
Boots on the ground there. Send ourselves.
I do plan on hopefully going down and checking things out. I don't know if I'll actually be in the I don't know, like it doesn't seem like it'd be that enjoyable to be in there when they're actually doing the picks themselves, because like you just stand around with like cattle and like yell, but like I'm sure there's going to be a lot of like NFL related activities down there that weekend. So like just going down there and hanging out will be probably pretty cool. I'll probably try to do that, but I don't think I'm actually going to try and like get in and sit there and be like, oh my God, it's Roger Goodell. Ooh, like that's a hard pass for me.
Yeah.
And then May 2nd is the deadline for when teams can exercise their fifth-year option for players selected in the first round of the 2021 draft. So that's when they have their they have to have those fifth-year options decided by that point in time. Then they have a couple of options here. They can either do May 3rd through the 6th or May 10th through the 13th. To do a 3-day post-draft rookie minicamp for rookies taken in the draft. They have two different options there so that each team can decide if they want to do May 3rd through the 6th or if they want to do the 10th through the 13th. And then May 8th or 9th, they should release the NFL schedules. Of course, we already know which teams will be playing next season, but we don't know the order there, so that'll come out in May. And then on the 13th, they will do the rookie football development programs. So at that point in time, they expand it out and the rookies can report. May 20th through the 22nd, they do the spring league meetings and the coach accelerator in Nashville. And then from that point in time, as far as I understand it, they get like 15 days before their first preseason game is actually when OTAs start. So depending on who gets selected for the August 8th Hall of Fame game, which is going to be the first NFL preseason game of the 2024 season, those two teams will actually get a head start in starting their offseason program or their OTAs.
Oh.
But for everybody else, it'll be that following Sunday is when most teams will have their first preseason games, and they'll start accordingly. So it's 15 days from the start of their first preseason game. And then, of course, the season itself will start on September 5th as the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs host a to-be-determined opponent. Of course, we already know who they'll be playing in terms of home games that season, but the NFL will be, when they do the roster or the schedule back here on the 8th and 9th, they'll actually lock in which specific team they'll be playing that day. And so those are the important dates to keep your eye on, Jeffrey. And as we look at the Lions in particular, here are some key numbers to keep in mind as we do head into the offseason. The Lions, this salary cap number is like after they sign a full man roster, they will have $48 million in cap space. They currently have 27 unrestricted free agents that they can choose to re-sign or not. Some of them, that includes players like Teddy Bridgewater, who of course is retiring and is not going to be coming back. So, and of course, Julian Okwara was just signed to the Philadelphia Eagles, and he is one of those 27 as well. So not all 27 of them will be coming back and wearing Honolulu blue next season, but something to keep an eye on. And then we have 7 draft picks in the upcoming draft. And according to the win records from this season, the Lions have the 11th toughest schedule next season. And as we take a look here, Jeffrey, at who our opponents are, uh, playing at Ford Field will be the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, the Chicago Bears. Of course, they are our NFC North rivals, and we play them once at home, once away every season. Then Matthew Stafford and the Rams will be coming back to Ford Field after their playoff loss. And maybe this time we'll give Matt Stafford a little bit more of a warm reception. I think that makes more sense, right?
I
Like
think
in
that
the
makes more
playoffs,
sense too. I mean, when
yeah,
when he came to Detroit, he was the enemy at that point. I love Matty Stafford, but I had to boo him that night.
yeah, you can give him a lot more love in this regular season game
Yeah,
and in that postseason game. It's just business. It's
yes,
nothing to get upset about.
and it was
Just
good
good
business.
business. Just
But
good business.
it's interesting. The slate has a lot of first year regimes going on with Tennessee, with the Seahawks, and I think that's going to be a kind of exciting because the Seahawks, whenever we had to play them, and I feel like we always end up getting the short end to stick with them. Like we finally don't have to play Pete Carroll.
Yeah,
So
it's going to be interesting to
yeah,
see how we do
yeah,
against a Seahawks team that isn't led by Pete Carroll. Was he the
yeah,
secret sauce into our struggles?
yeah. The
We
bad man
should
might be gone.
we'll be able to find out this season. And then, of course, we do have a couple of playoff teams here that will be playing at home in the Packers, the Bills, the Buccaneers, and the Rams. So
Yeah,
nice of the NFL to schedule those. Of course, that's why we do have we're not in the top 10 of difficulty, but we are just outside of it. So it is a difficult schedule we have. And if you look here at the away games, you can see there are some more playoff teams here with the Dallas Cowboys, the Houston Texans, and of course the San Francisco 49ers. And then we have our NFC North rivals and the Colts and the Cardinals here as well. And the Colts also, I mean, they're not, that's not a gimme. They just missed the playoffs with Gardner Minshew. They should have Anthony Richardson back next season. So
yeah. No,
it,
I'm excited to see him. I'm annoyed that we always have to play Dallas at Dallas. Bring us over here. They're too scared. Just too scared to schedule that team here in Detroit. But I think the Texans one's going to be interesting because I think D'Amico Ryans is a very good head coach, and he got that team with that rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud very far this year and ahead of a lot of expectations. So I think it'll be cool to see that matchup.
yeah, and also I liked also the matchup against Jacksonville too, the one at home because again Jacksonville was last year. I think they failed expectations. They were supposed to be a team like the Lions that was supposed to be taking that step forward. And while we were able to succeed with it, they were not as successful. So it'll be interesting to see how we match up with them next season. Because obviously, just because we know how this season played out. It's a whole new ball game next year, especially with all the moves and everything that'll be happening in free agency. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's
I wonder how many primetime home games we'll have or primetime games in general. I mean, they gave us some love this year, but now that we're a hot team, and we could be seeing these Lions in primetime.
yeah, there's certainly a plethora of good matchups here that could get us some national love. So hopefully we'll see the Lions continue a hot hand there because they played very well when they were playing in front of national TV audiences. So hopefully that carries over to next season because I definitely think we have a chance of seeing quite a few given who our opponents are for next season.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey. What are your predictions here for the Lions? Obviously, they have the 17 games coming up. This isn't a hard and fast. This is our way too early predictions for next season. I know we've already talked about there's a lot of really good matchups in this schedule, so it really could go. I mean, it could go a lot of ways, the final record, but where are you putting the Lions at record wise at the end of next season? And do you have them winning back to back NFC North titles?
I do, and I think we're gonna have the same record. And yeah, I'm not looking at individual matchups. This is pure. This take is purely on Kool-Aid, but
Mm.
but yeah, I think we repeat our consistency as far as our record, and yeah, we win that back to back. We're back in the playoffs.
So I definitely have some hesitation and about the upcoming schedule, and also, a lot is going to depend on what happens with Green Bay, Chicago, and Minnesota,
Green Bay
because
scares me a little bit.
Green Bay is a little bit scary,
Yeah.
but so I mean Chicago and Minnesota are a little bit scary too. Minnesota, I think, is the least scary. Well, I guess they both have. You don't really know what's going to happen at quarterback, right? Like, is Chicago going to keep Justin Fields? Are
Yeah,
they going to
that's
trade him?
the thing.
There's
Yeah.
that. Is Kirk Cousins coming back to Minnesota? There's a lot of uncertainty with those two teams.
They talk about the AFC North being the toughest division. I think the NFC North can hold its weight with other teams as far as how difficult it is to win.
I 100% agree. So I mean, those are 6 games, right? We're playing against NFC North opponents, and they're not gimmies. I am, like I said, I do have my reservations, but this is going to be a Kool-Aid prediction as well. I'm actually saying we're going to get our first 13-win season. We'll finish one
Oh,
game better next season. But it's mostly because I don't trust
one seed
Dallas
with the one seed.
with potentially a 1 seed. I don't know if we're beat. San Francisco could be one of our 4 losses on the season. That could be the case.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm gonna have win one more, go 13-4, and do repeat with a back-to-back NFC North title, which would put them into the playoffs. And then I don't necessarily know if I can. If I'm already drinking the Kool Aid, but I don't know if I want to be drinking so much of it that I say they're automatically like I'm predicting a NFC Championship game bid out of them. But I do expect them to win at least one playoff game next season
yeah,
again, and be in the mix. So
yeah,
that's where I'm at for postseason expectations.
yeah,
I
yeah.
expect them to win the NFC North, have that home game, get the win. After that, it'll be. I'll definitely feel. I'll have to see where the team's at to feel more comfortable with giving them more than that. But it should be an interesting season,
Yeah.
and I think we have a good young core in this, particularly despite it being mocked at times, this draft class, it has proven to
Masterclass
be
by Brad Holmes.
yeah, it's proven to be superb. So my question here for you, Jeffrey, as we wind down, is just which of these Lions rookies takes the biggest leap forward in year 2? Who do you have taken a step forward?
Oh man, I actually think Jameer Gibbs. Well, I think he's going to be the same. I think there's no way that Sam Laporta can be better than what he is, right? Unless he
Even better.
like him being more historic than he was this year. Like, well, that's nuts. But I I I think it's going to be Jameer Gibbs. I think we're going to see. I think he's going to outproduce Montgomery. But I do love that they have both of these guys. So I feel like the wear and tear on Jameer Gibbs is much less than some of these other guys, just because they can split their running game with two really good backs. And I feel comfortable with when Jameer's not having a good day or he's not like scheme wise what we need. Like we have somebody who can take care of business with like power running and like breaking tackles and all kinds of stuff. But I guess he's not really so I have one who I think who's gonna be a star next year, but he's not technically a rookie. It's Jameson Williams. I mean
Well, I mean that.
this are his first full season with us. He started out slow. They worked him in, but like in the beginning, we were seeing flashes of like, whoa, this guy has unreal speed. First of all, and he's bought into our run game as far as getting blocks, setting edges, and he's a pretty skinny guy too.
Yep.
I think he's becoming less and less a project and more going to be like a weapon. I mean, he caught touchdowns in the playoffs. He's a part of a lot of big plays. I think he's going to
Two
take the
touchdown game in the
yeah,
NFC
yeah.
Championship
I
game.
think
Yeah.
he's going to. I think he's going to, even though he's not a rookie, so I kind of cheated there.
Well, that we'll allow it because he's played about as many games as the
Yeah,
rookies have. So that's fair. And I think I'm going to go outside the core four when you think of Lions rookies, and I'm actually going to go with Broderick Martin, the defensive
okay.
tackle that was taken in the 3rd round. I've seen a lot of good things about like what he's saying he's going to be doing this offseason. Obviously, he put out very little action this season for the Lions. But it just, you know, again, with everything Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell do when it goes into selecting players to fit sort of, the culture that they're building here in Detroit, it's fine. I find it hard to believe like that they missed completely on this guy.
Yeah.
So obviously he has right now like the lowest expectations. So he has the ability to just like exceed them as long as he comes out and does really anything. So it's kind of, it's easy for him to take the biggest leap because the other guys have all contributed so much already. But I definitely think that he is most likely to, I'm hopeful that he's going to come out here and be like, hey, everyone was talking about the other guys. Well, guess what? There's a fifth Lions rookie that, at that point he'll be it'll be a second year. There's a fifth guy from that draft class that you guys should be keeping an eye on. So.
Oh, another good one for this would be Jack Campbell. I mean,
oh yeah,
he quietly had a decent season. I mean, he didn't light the world on fire, but like he was a rookie linebacker who showed a lot of promise. And I think, he has potential to, be another, because middle linebacker is a difficult position to play. So like putting out like a fresh college grad out there, it's not easy for them to like just light up the world in one season.
Absolutely. And I think, Brian Branch also, I mean, we're spoiled for choices because Brian Branch is another guy who at moments he definitely had a lot of great moments this season. But if he can consistently be a contributor on defense, we've seen him make plays in the run game, in the pass game. Like if he can, boost his interception numbers or help us get to the quarterback more often and get sacks. Like there's a lot of ways that he could help out, and just so there's, I think we're spoiled for choice for this question, which is a nice thing to have. Yeah, on the reverse side of things, though, Jeffrey, who are you most worried about having the sophomore slump?
This one, I'm mostly actually worried about Brian Branch because he was he was on fire and all over the field this year. And it was pretty clear by mid-season that the defense was a bend not break defense with our secondary, although not being very good in coverage, have a bunch of playmakers on it. And Dan Campbell's always like in those halftime interviews, like, oh, we just got to get a turnover and we're good. And they generated plenty of turnovers this year. So I feel like with that, there's a little bit more like in the way for like having a less effective season, especially it depends on who they get into the secondary on free agency. He doesn't have to shoulder the playmaking load.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, at times too, he's not afraid to go in there and be aggressive and be physical. But at the same time, I think, there were some penalties. It was only, I think, one or two penalties, but I don't want to see him go too far overboard. Like, I love CJ Gardner-Johnson, but at times, right, like his personality, that swag that he brings to the table can almost be too much. And I don't want Brian Branch to swerve too far into that way, because I definitely like the intensity he brings and everything.
I also want him to wear a mouth guard, man. Like have the one for the symbolism, but have the one for safety.
That's nobody. All it takes is biting that tongue once.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna have a good time. So I'm there with you. But also, I'm also I know you had talked up Jahmyr Gibbs. I am kind of worried about him. Not that I think he is going to fall off necessarily, but the fact that, the running back position is a position obviously where we can see players get banged up. And so I'm mostly just worried about, he had a relatively injury-free rookie season. Is he going to be able to be healthy the same way he was for us next season? I think I think the injury thing could be the biggest thing for Gibbs potentially. Not that he's proven to be injury prone or anything like that, but just with the nature of the position, I think that's the only reason I am possibly concerned about him having a slump if he were to get hurt, because we did see David Montgomery miss some time, and he filled in nicely. So if it's if it just works out that the fates decide next season it's on, they're flipping roles there, it's unfortunate, but something just
Yeah,
something that worries you at times.
yeah, absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right. Well, so we've talked about the players on the team, Jeffrey, but what's on your wish list? And we've talked about some of the areas of concern with this team. What's on your wish list for the Lions this offseason?
Most of it is, in fact, all of it's on the defense. It'd be nice for someone else to win a one-on-one matchup to help Aiden Hutchinson out,
Yep.
because we have a lot of pressures, but I feel like we have given up a lot of sack opportunities. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah,
I
we
would
were. I
definitely,
think we were
yeah,
like top 10 in like QB pressures, and then we were bottom 20 in QB sacks.
yeah,
So
right.
we're getting pressure, just
I
not
mean,
getting
we
sacks.
we were more successful doing like a nickelback blitz when we bring like Brian Branch uh, like another corner just in
Mhm.
just to generate something that kind of gets them in bad yardage situations. But definitely that. But I think the biggest need for me is to up that secondary.
Mm.
Like Cam Sutton, to me, I did not like watching him get cooked all the time. And I feel like, he came from Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh typically has a good defense. But, on the flip side of that, he's also playing a defense he's never played before.
Mm.
He Man versus him being more traditionally a zone kind of quarterback. So that I feel like that didn't work out very well because he was getting cooked out there, and I feel like that wasn't necessarily indicative on his skill. But yeah, I would definitely want some better players in the secondary. I personally would not like to see CJ Gardner Johnson back. I think he's just kind of, I don't know. I feel like he doesn't fit what's going on here. And I mean, he played well coming off the injury, but, that was a contract year for him. So he's going to ask for some kind of money out there. And I feel like we could get some better players, or, some promising rookies.
Mm.
But definitely, I would say someone who could win a one-on-one matchup on the line and some quarterbacks.
Well, they did go ahead and sign Matthew Betts. 20. He's the most outstanding defensive player from the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, yeah.
Coming from the British Columbian Lions.
I mean, why
So
not?
once a Lion, always a Lion. He had 18 sacks in 18 games and 42 tackles on the season. So they're bringing him in. I've also heard a number of rumors attaching the Lions to trading for a number of different pass rushers, whether it be potentially Daniil Hunter from the Vikings or Khalil
Oh,
Mack
you,
from the
you think the
Chargers.
Vikings would do business with us?
You never know. I mean, you
That's
never.
kind of nuts. I mean, we've
Spicy
seen it happen
doing.
before, but in division trades. But I feel like those are more not necessarily taboo, but it's like I'm not helping the direct competition.
Yeah, yeah. I personally wouldn't do it, but if the Vikings are willing, I mean, Daniil Hunter is a beast. Khalil Mack's another name. Joey Bosa as well, because obviously with Jim Harbaugh coming into the Chargers, they're kind of in an interesting
Yeah.
situation. Um, I know also the Eagles. Why am I forgetting his name? Not Haskins.
Oh,
Hassan Reddick is
oh
another
yeah.
guy that they've been talking about as potential target. So I'm in. Obviously they signed this guy out of the Canadian Football League, which who knows if that's going to his success there is going to translate to the NFL.
He
But
seems
I
like a gritty, high motor guy. So like, why not take a chance? He kind of fits what
yeah
they want out of players on the team. And if you could get him up to NFL competition, he can contribute. Why not?
yeah absolutely. And I mean, as much as I would love to have another premier pass rusher. uh, on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson, I'm also not opposed to having, multiple guys because pass rushers are one of those things where you cannot have enough of them.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the
obviously,
Eagles are typically the deepest on the defensive line, and they typically have one of the better defenses in the league.
yeah. And you want to have guys like Aiden Hutchinson and things like that, but having depth there is also huge. And that was one thing, we struggled with. We had guys we liked, but not really any depth in players of who could actually get home to the quarterback. And it would be nice to have that. And then, like you said, I think getting a real number one cornerback would be good. I think Cam Sutton is a great number two guy, but as your number one dude that's shut down corner, I'd love to see us potentially go after somebody. Whether I've seen some mock drafts where they have us trading up to go get Kool-Aid out of Alabama,
Oh yeah,
and having Kool-Aid play on the Lions would be, it'd be
that would
kind of
be.
cool,
Oh man,
kind
that
of
would.
cool.
The possibilities
Um,
are endless for that one.
but yeah, I'd love to see them get into the DB, and then also, as we start to look at this offensive line, I think they've really done a great job of building success with this team by building in the trenches. And you have Frank Ragnow, who there were some discussions. He has only been playing for 7 seasons, but there were some discussions already about him potentially retiring. Obviously, he was banged up a lot these last couple of seasons.
He played a
So
playoff game on like a destroyed knee.
yeah.
Absolutely nuts.
So even if, like, I'm not saying we have to draft his replacement, but drafting another competent center and some more competent offensive linemen, because obviously, we're going to run into that same problem that every team has with the cap room management, right? Like, we might not be able to have as many veteran guys behind our starters on the offensive line. So let's try and get some good young offensive lineman talent in there. So if we can do that, get a pass rusher, get a cornerback, and then sure up that offensive line, because Jared Goff has shown we give him time, he's going to cook. So
Yeah.
I think making sure that we don't let that offensive line fall into disrepair is important, because right now we have one of the top 3 offensive lines in the NFL, and so hopefully we can continue to say that here for years to come. And I think if we can, that's the recipe for success.
Absolutely.
And speaking of recipes of success, Jeffrey, the last thing we'll do in this final episode is just talk about a little bit about the plans for season 8. I don't have necessarily anything set in stone, but we are going to look to expand, how we're presenting the show, potentially doing adding TikTok live to this, as well as doing some things on just TikTok, YouTube Reels, Facebook Live, or is it YouTube Shorts and Facebook Reels? I don't know. Instagram. No, it's Instagram Reels.
All the socials.
All the socials, just expanding our sort of footprint, and giving you guys different ways to engage with some content, and potentially some content outside of our just normal episodes like we do. We've been talking about like our picking our Mount Rushmores and having those be short video clips, things like that. So those potentially coming, and then also another big thing would be to take the actual recording from the main episodes and use that and repurpose it for a podcast as well, so that if in case you don't have time to tune into the live show that we're doing every week, you'll be able to listen to that podcast at your leisure. And as much fun as it is to tune in and see our lovely faces, if you prefer just to listen to our soothing, sultry voices, we're not gonna yuck your yum. So we just want to try and make sure that we're providing you with ways for you to connect with us, regardless of what channels and media you use, and that's something that you can look forward to in season 8. And obviously there were a lot of important dates we covered in this episode, some of those being like the draft and free agency and things like that. So obviously we won't get back to doing regular episodes until the start of next season. But in the meantime, you'll probably catch us doing a couple one-off episodes here or there to sort of go over and, give our reactions to the draft being a big one. We'll certainly want to be talking about what we thought about what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and crew did. And then, any big free agent signings or trades, any of that stuff that goes down, I'm sure you'll catch me and Jeffrey back here for an impromptu episode in the off time between season 7 and season 8. So, yeah, certainly, Jeffrey, I want to thank you for coming along with us on this ride through season 7. It was your first season, and you had a much better track record through it than I think I had through my first season.
You were saying that they only started being good when I started, and I don't want to mess with the mojo that's going out in Motown. So I got to come back next year. And thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
No, we definitely enjoyed. And then, of course, everybody who's tuned in with us, whether you've been on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter, we certainly appreciate your interactions throughout the season. And certainly and definitely invite you to continue to follow the Lions Grid and sort of interact with us in chat. We love to have that back and forth with you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to grow the audience a little bit more here next season, and take it to new heights. I mean, we really don't have any big expectations for the show. Obviously, we do this for fun. I don't think me or Jeffrey plan on this replacing our full time job anytime soon. So,
But
uh,
if it happens, I'll let it happen.
yeah. If everyone wants us to do this, like again, like if the NFL wants us to be able to stream games and talk about them, we'll do it. We're not going to say no, but it's not necessarily we're not hard committing to that path. We're not like, oh yeah, it's gonna happen. So, um, but yeah, just want to thank everybody who tuned in and made this. I think our most successful season so far of the Lions Grid, and you'll certainly be hearing from us soon. We'll definitely, uh, obviously, me and Jeffrey will be talking in the off season and getting our plans figured out for the cadence. We may be back every Thursday at 6 o'clock. It may be a different day. All just depends on sort of what we get figured out. But we'll certainly, as soon as we have the regular schedule figured out for the upcoming season, we'll get that out to you. And of course, the Lions season will be locked in on either May 8th or 9th. That's when they will release the NFL schedules for this upcoming season. So that should give us a good idea of what we're looking at. And we may do an episode then just sort of outlining, what our sort of plans are to tackle that upcoming season. But until then, I'm Kevin Marheine. He's Jeffrey Raymond. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. And we will catch you during the 2024 NFL season. Good night, everybody,
Bye,
and have
everybody.
a good one.